Q&A as well. If you haven't introduced yourself, I just picked on a few. You can also write in the chat a brief introduction. But with that said, let me just hand it over to you, Rafaela.
Yes, thank you so much, Janus. And yeah, nice of you all to join. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Rafaela Ellensburg. I work at Albert Heijn currently for already 10 years. And Albert Heijn is the largest grocery retailer in the Netherlands and affiliated with Ahold Delhaize. And I work there as a content engineering consultant. And last year, I started my own agency, the Content Engineering Agency, where my ambition is to share within the Netherlands what content engineering is, because it's not that familiar yet. And it's actually a discipline that I've started within Albert Heijn as a separate function next to content experience, content creation. And I'm in between. So I'm really the bridge between tech and business and translating those two worlds, bridging those two worlds together. And I do this now from my own agency by giving lectures and workshops about smart content architecture, about how to use meaning as a strategy, which is connected to knowledge graphs and semantic layers, and how these things can scale success by using content as a strategic asset within complex enterprise organizations, such as Albert Heijn. And today I want to share with you what my observations are in content engineering for 2026. Although the year has just started, I already see what is changing within this discipline and how that affects whatever the focus will shift for many organizations. So a few things about what's changing, and these are the trees that I see most for myself, but also am starting to lean more towards, is that content models, as we've designed them for publishing web pages, are shifting from just publishing and reusing content more towards how we can design those models for AI retrieval and actually using content as data within workflows. And that means that the structure that we've applied to content as metadata within our CMSs now are not just to support the publishing of content, but actually the entire context architecture that AI tools need to keep the outputs reliable at scale, especially in complex environments. So it's not just metadata within a silo, but it's actually using that metadata to connect to other domains within the business. So an example I can give is actually from Albert Heijn itself. So we have an app that 4 million customers are visiting every week. And the first thing that those customers see when they open the app is a large banner that shows what the campaign of the week is. But having that many customers, you cannot just show one message, because one message is not that interesting to all customers. You actually want it to be very relevant. And that is where metadata comes in to connect our content with our customer domain, but also with our campaign domain and product domain, so that we can see which content is eligible to be most relevant for which customer is visiting the app at that moment. And that is the context that is needed within the structure of metadata to enable a relevant customer experience, not just on one channel, but on multiple channels. And so what we're seeing is that the discipline is actually shifting from using content as components, which we saw in the the shift towards headless with CMS systems. And now we're seeing more that we need to use content as an operational system. So it's not just the content as components within the CMS only. It's actually how can we connect other consuming systems with that content so that we can create those relevant omnichannel customer experiences at scale. And this includes not just modeling, but also, okay, what is the workflow? What are the processes that we need to automate so that we can do this at scale? And how do we govern these processes? So who is the owner of what within the entire content value chain? And how do we measure what effect it has? And as long as you haven't transformed your content into linked data, this is a very difficult exercise and a very scattered exercise to undertake. So you really need to be able to connect your data to other data points from other domains to be able to do this at scale. And one of the things I have hands-on experience in now, or what I'm exercising myself in, is moving away from having the content model only in a nice draw.io schema that you can draw, but actually implementing it. So I'm using zero code tools such as Make, which you're seeing now in the screen, to actually operationalize these models that I've created from a content engineering perspective, and see how that can be applied into workflows that need to be automated for end users. So here's an example of a workflow that I've made with an AI agent in between that captures the context. And within the context, we have what does the tone of voice need to be for the content that we want to publish? What are the brand guidelines? And what are for example, the SEO keywords on which we want to perform? And that is everything that that I have stored as context within this AI agent. And then I use multiple, I use one sheet as a core to contain the metadata that is needed as input, so that the AI agent generates relevant output within that same sheet that can be connected again to a CMS system, if you will. But this is just one of the things that I've been working on the past week. So it's still very fresh, but it helps me to deal with these changes that I'm seeing within content engineering at the moment. So are there any questions about this so far?
I think so far so good, Rafaela. I think you have, was it still like one or two other observations?
Yes, I have. So if I move to the next one, which is more about what still matters within content engineering, is that we still need those stable content models, because those are the grounding that the tools that we employ use as a way to create that consistent output that we want to see. So really the thinking that we are doing upfront to create these models help the tools to generate the output that we expect from it. And it actually also helps us to reuse the components that we have already created for our content and scale that reuse by shifting from manually filling in those components with the content, and instead let it be generated by these AI tools that we have based on the tone of voice and the brand guidelines that I've just mentioned. So you want those AI tools to create variations and to scale, but you want it to be in a controlled way so that it doesn't diverge from the guidelines that you have provided for it. So these models are still the foundation that we need before we scale the output that we can enable with AI tools. And that really needs what I'm seeing right now is it needs a lot more governance and also clear rules about, okay, who owns this content, who owns these decisions that we make on the content that we want to generate, and also how it changes the processes that we are used to in mostly manual content operations that we were used to work with. So the technology has innovated incredibly fast, but I'm still seeing that teams that need to work with these new tooling are getting stuck because of the processes that they still haven't changed, and the ownership that is still unclear. So I really, want to touch upon these points in the discussion next of what you guys experience within, having that ownership and having that governance on the content, because that is really what organizations, especially complex organizations, need to and to keep control on whatever can be scaled. And this immediately touches upon where teams risk overcomplicating their work. So what I'm seeing is that many teams want to adopt these AI tools that are now available to them, but they are treating these LLMs and the vector databases on which they run as something magical that will solve all their problems. But their underlying content is still messy and poorly governed. So you almost see the same thing that happened with big data, is where the data quality was really subpar to benefit from the value of the large amount of data that we have. And the same thing is what we're seeing with content now. So if you want to treat content as data, that also means that you need to keep the quality of the content as data very high, so that the output that is generated by the AI is as consistent and as of high quality as you want it to be, to prevent you from basically not scaling content, but scaling the chaos that was already there. So that's one of the things that I see, where teams are running into bottlenecks, basically. And the other thing that I see that stems from when we started treating content as components is that you can also fall into the trap of over-atomizing everything, so making it more and more and more granular. But at some point, that granularity doesn't give you a higher amount of value as output. So within atomizing content, what you really need to look for is find those patterns that actually drive value. And the way in which I would do this, in which I would approach this, is really look for patterns that align with the strategic concepts of a business. So where a business already creates value in other domains, and see how your content reflects those parts, right? So again, with this example of Albert Heijn, whenever we do campaigns, it always stems from some business concept and some strategic goal that we want to achieve. And based on that, we start creating these different content assets to market a campaign. And within those assets, you could already see what kind of patterns are really important that drive value. So for example, in a campaign about organic products, what is important there is that you have that concept of organic represented in your content assets, as, for example, a certain logo that you always use to signal that a product is an organic product. And also the colors and the marketing assets that you use that translate the organic concept into something that you can communicate to customers. And once you stick to that level of atomizing your content, that's already enough. So it's really tied into, okay, what is the strategic value and how do I see that in the content assets that I create? And don't make it more granular than that, I would say. And then the last thing, of course, is if I make the bridge again to context architecture, where we see the use of knowledge graphs and semantic layers starting to come up. Some of the conversations I had with architects within the enterprise is that they're afraid that using those, that semantic technology, they see that as one model to rule them all. And it's almost as if we are creating another monolith. But I want to state that that is really not the case with knowledge graphs. It's really an iterative exercise that you need to take in creating a knowledge graph, and the flexibility of it really lends itself to do that. So if I need to capture all of these observations that I'm seeing, then 3 things stand out to me that we need to take into 2026. So one of them is, well, again, treat content as linked data to ground AI for accuracy and predictable output. So if that is what you want as a brand or as an organization, then that would be, my advice to take. And if we look at that operational way of thinking that content now needs, if we want to use it as an operational system, then it really helps to think of content as products in a supply chain operation. And what really helped me to do this for content is to look at Lean Six Sigma principles. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Lean Six Sigma really teaches you how to remove bottlenecks and redundancies within your supply chain operation. And if you can think of content as products that you want to distribute across multiple channels, then that actually also helps you to really think about, okay, how can I use content as an operational system in an efficient and effective manner within complex organizations? And then last but not least is you can think big. That's really good, but please start small when you start implementing these principles that I mentioned. Because really the small wins that you make with that and the connections that you can then make to other domains helps you to iteratively generate value and reinvest that value again in bigger and bigger use cases. And in the end, you can actually connect the dots across multiple domains instead of creating other silos again. So this
Very
is
good. Thank you, Rafaela.
I have. You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. I think I saw, Dean, that you were on mute. Did you want to come with a comment or a related post?
Yeah, there is a related post, actually. I'll put that in later. I've struggled a bit with how much autonomy we give AI over our content models. To what extent, when we're talking about AI working with data, to what extent do we allow AI to change the data or change the model? And this gets into a very philosophical point, which is what part of our domain of information do we make sacrosanct and we don't let AI touch it, and we just let AI manipulate and create projections of it? I've traditionally drawn that line at the content model, like the content model is mine.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm going to risk Giannis making fun of me, but I am going to put a blog post in the chat. I feel like there may be a point where we move to like a 2-stage content model, where we have our content model that we control, but then we have aspects of our content model that we let AI modify. I don't know. I'm still struggling with that. I don't know what I own and what the machine owns anymore.
Yeah. So that really also touches upon the workflows. So your first question, what do we let the AI control? It depends on what your use case is, I would say. So if it is mostly about generating variations of a static piece of content that you have, and you're fine with, how do I say it? You're fine with whatever creative combinations the AI is making of it, then that is a part that I would definitely let AI control, because it has such a broader way of creatively combining the components that we have as content, much more than we humans can. And from that, from the variations that it creates, we as humans can pick the ones that come closest to, whatever we're fine with. But the thing that I would not let AI control is definitely the model, but also the guiding principles that we give it as input. So again, as a brand, what you have as your tone of voice and what you have as your brand guidelines or your design system, those are the things that really need to remain governed by humans, I would say. And then use that as the grounding for the AI to generate output that really aligns with those guiding principles. So that's my take.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right, then let's go back to you, Sab.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things maybe that, thank you, by the way, Rafaela. This was a great presentation.
Thank you.
It was really interesting. I had not heard of Make. I've already got it open in another tab. I will go take a look at it after.
It's addicting. It's addicting. Watch out.
So one of the things that you talked about, and Dean, you touched on it as well, about sort of like who owns what and how do you give AI some freedom, but also make sure that it doesn't go off the rails. In data infrastructure or data engineering, there's and one of the things that's kind of common to AI now is there's these frameworks called evals, which are essentially, think of them as tests. And one of the things that's pretty popular right now is to use evals as a way of sort of like verifying or double checking the output of an AI. So if you have something that's, in this case, let's say you're giving a lot of freedom or a lot of creativity based on a base content model or a large body of content, and you're trying to have your AI make something very specific, once that output gets generated, you can run it through essentially an eval framework, which essentially grades the output against a set of rules or definitions that you've specified. So it sort of flips it a little bit. Instead of having the AI mostly in control and some human input, an eval is typically where much stronger and well-defined rules by a human, but then get kind of like you use an AI to interpret that against the output. So it's almost like a second pass before the content, before the output gets to the person. And I've found that can be very successful. In terms of making sure that that what makes it out the door to your customers, your users, or whatever is a little more in line with things like you said, your design system and all that stuff. Because at some point, humans, you can't scale that to humans if you're using AI. So evals as a framework is a pretty well established tool, and is something that I would recommend probably for content as well.
Thank you, Seb. Let's jump straight from Ottawa to Montreal. Joyce.
Thanks so much, Rafaela, for sharing your experience. We're in the process of making a similar change in terms of our content strategy approach, but we're a university in Montreal, so we have a super decentralized environment that really values autonomy and overconformity. So this is going to be a big change. Right now, all of our departments have autonomy over their content, and we're looking at introducing an approach that's similar to this. So going from manually created content to content that follows a very structured workflows, very structured definitions. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the change management aspects of this process? Because I expect you didn't start with this, so I think you made some changes and maybe some takeaways that you got from that experience.
Yeah, definitely. So we are actually also currently within Albert Heijn, we have a content hub, which centralizes also a lot of the different content databases that we had running. Like we had 80 of them or something like that. So if you look at the change management that you need to make, what definitely helps is a mandate from the C-level, or this, I don't know, within universities if it's also C-suite, but you need mandate from leadership, because a bottom-up approach will not work in this because teams are too stubborn. So you really need to enforce, okay, from now on, we are working towards a centralized content management operation, where it is very important that you have the principle of the first time right. So whatever enters the centralized database, if you will work towards that, that should be done. So it needs to adhere to a standard of definition of done that you all agree upon. So in that sense, the teams will lose some of their autonomy, but what helps to help them adopt this new way of working is showing how it could benefit them. So how could it really accelerate their way of working? How could it really make their workflows much more efficient, and also prevent the duplication of work that we often see within decentralized content operations? So it actually revolves around how can you make the business case, like quantify it for leadership, because that helps them to give you that top-down mandate. And then from the team's perspective, you actually help them to make their work better, to make their work more efficient and more impactful. And to actually make it actionable, what you will need at some point is some sort of policy around content operations. So, and that should center around the things that they are actually making. So what are the assets that they are creating? And what are the policy, what are the standards and the rules and the governance on those assets to keep it all tied together? So yeah, that's a little bit of what I can say about the change management aspect of it.
That's really helpful. We got the go ahead from the executive staff, and we're kicking off our meeting today with our secondary stakeholders. So this process that you're talking about right now about getting practitioners on board is what we're moving into today. So I might reach out to you.
Exciting. Yes, thank you.
I think that's for me the
Oh, Jonas is falling away, I think. Is he freezing?
great choice.
Oh.
Any other comments? We're coming up at the end here. I would say also, like Seb said, but also others, thank you so much, Rafaela, for preparing this and giving us an update on this.
Thank you.
This term content engineering, which I think is still not as widespread as it should be. But it's clear that something is happening with content, thanks to LLMs and everything that we call AI these days, but then agents like you brought in there, so appreciate it. As usual, I will write this up, share it as a blog post, also the slides from Rafaela. So let's keep the conversation going on content engineering. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
And hope to see many of you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much, everyone. See you soon.